Welcome to Rappahannock Issues. I'm Tom Cohen,
And I'm David Kerr.
and we're going to be looking at topics that are of interest to our community, both regionally and to the state.
Hello, I'm David Kerr, and welcome to Rappahannock Issues. Here with my co-host, Tom Cohn.
Howdy.
We've been talking baseball. We've been talking baseball with our two Spotsylvania guests, Supervisor Chris Yakubowski and Supervisor Tim McLaughlin. We've also had Tom Burns from the Rappahannock Baseball Initiative. They've all had different points of view on baseball, but we're going to talk just a second about what it all means. Tom, you've got some interesting views on this, particularly with a topic people haven't discussed during our last three sessions, and that's traffic.
Yeah, and one of my concerns was the area. I mean, one interesting little sidebar for Student Government Day this year, which I do for Stafford, I picked the idea of putting a 5,000-seat baseball stadium in Stafford. And so it was rather funny. The students who were on the board supervisors were all wondering how I knew that it was, it was a topic. And I don't have that much power. But one of the issues that the students brought up.
They'll believe anything, just tell
really,
them.
And then they learn the truth. When we were talking in Stafford, and the same is true for this area of Spotsy, is the traffic. That area down in Massaponax is really heavily traveled. And one of the deals that was made for housing development was to put in a new exit down there. And what I haven't heard, and I'm sort of curious to find out, is what was planned by VDOT for the new housing development take Massaponax up to with that new housing development or beyond that, because there's new housing development on top of that they're talking about, and then if you add a park, the baseball stadium isn't just going to be even more. And have they really planned it? Because VDOT, when they're talking about the 630 interchange in Stafford, made their plan without ever looking at Stafford's comp plan. And so their plan would be at level F with the possible development in Stafford as it is now. And so I'm wondering if VDOT really has thought through this.
I would come back and say that I'm not sure if VDOT has even been brought in, because this deal was just made public a couple of weeks ago. It had to be in closed session because they couldn't have the full board, more than three members participating.
Yep.
So I'm not too sure anybody's talked to VDOT yet.
And I guess that's, from being on the planning commission, that's where my mind always goes is, all right, this is a nice concept, but how is it going to actually function? And so beyond the whole, how much money and the debt and the spending, I just is interesting, have they really looked into the mechanics of the roads? They may have. I just don't know how fast VDOT moves.
Well, Tom, you have a lot of experience in economic development issues, particularly by being on the Stafford County Planning Commission. A lot of people are billing this as an economic development initiative. In fact, Tom talked about stadiums in other communities, how they prompted economic development around them. Is that an argument you buy into?
Well, and there's a lot to be said to doing some type of investment for economic development. Stafford just approved some things for up at the Town Center to try to do that. We talked last night about having a business district in the center part of Stafford. That would be sort of a driving engine to try to get some development. So there is a case to be made. But again, I'm not sure, given how compact Massaponax is, where it would go. Because, I mean, if it's next to the CarMax and the gym and and then there's homes, and then there's more shops, and then there's Germana, there's not much open space. So I'm sort of curious what they envision and where would it go.
Well, there's been some discussion. Tim McLaughlin, who was on, was questioning in his mind whether he thought that the county should be putting this kind of money, and nearly, I think it total added up to $27 million into a baseball stadium. Is that an appropriate use of taxpayer money? Because you talk about Aquia, that's only about $6 million.
Yes.
This is a very big ticket item.
And it's sort of interesting, and I don't have an issue, I don't have a stand on it because it's not necessarily my bailiwick, but the question is, a lot of times if you're going to do major projects, you have a bond referendum. And it's really being decided by possibly just 4 people on one board, which is sort of an interesting dynamic because if you're going to build schools or if you're going to do parks, you usually do a bond referendum and get the voters buy-in. So, but because of the timing, that's not possible. So it's an interesting dynamic there. And it's a question. I mean, if all localities are facing tighter budgets for schools, tighter budgets for sheriff, tighter budget for this, and yet you're going to spend it on this other aspect, and those are choices that the people are going to have to make. And from the public meeting they had, a lot of people did come out with different views and different ways to look at it, which is
It got downright raucous.
yeah, which is that's our system.
And Chris just sort of sitting out there like, thank you very much.
Yes. So that's an interesting dynamic. Is can the county spend that much? And I know with this group that their stadium right now is from the 1930s. So in theory, that's a good number of years they've been in this one. So it's not likely that they would build this and leave very quickly. So there's that. That's a nice little safety valve of it. But then they're talking about graduations and other things. And just from the school employee mindset, most school systems, they do all the graduations at the same time. Or will the people at Riverbend really want to go down to Massaponax for a graduation ceremony? And those are the little things that I don't know that, I mean, on one level things sound good, and then you think of the mechanics of it.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's a big quandary for that board to decide which way they want to go on this.
Well, another question that I've been thinking about is, and I never get too far with this, is there enough interest in baseball? I love the Nationals. They had Davey Johnson was here talking in favor of the team. Manager of the Nationals, really cool, but he's going to go away, and we're going to have a baseball team here. Will we get the people to actually show up, pay admission, and make this stadium and the franchise worthwhile?
Well, and it's funny. There's people who, as soon as you talk about baseball, their eyes sort of glass over, and they get all excited, and they cite statistics and who they saw and all these names. And I mean, people do that. Some people do it with movies. Some people will do it with NASCAR. Some people will do it with opera. Or TV shows, so there's the passion aspect, and I think our population is big enough that they may well be. I mean, instead of having to drive all the way to D.C. to see a game, they could see it down here. But that's again, I know in Pinellas County where I lived in Florida, they were going to build a stadium, and everybody was saying, "Oh, tickets will be $5." Well, no, not anymore. It's not $5 tickets, and so once they saw the real cost of tickets, it was sticker shock. So that'll be interesting.
Well, as the county board goes into its deliberations, and they've got several weeks if they get the extension to do that, what advice would you offer to them?
I think just a lot of listening, going around and talking to the public, and get as much of the details as possible. It's always a lot of the death is in the details, or the success is in the details.
Which has been the point made by both sides, namely that Tim talking about the details being a killer to him, and then Chris saying details aren't a finished deal yet. So this will be a very exciting and developing issue.
What are we in the 3rd inning of this game, and we'll see what happens in the 7th inning stretch.
And before we already got past the national. Thank you very much for joining us in Rappahannock Issues.